Awakening inner freedom and transcending the ego is often talked about in terms of becoming nothing, becoming nobody. And yet most of our lives is spent trying to become somebody, trying to do things, trying to accomplish things. Even enlightenment itself is thought of as something we want to accomplish. So how do we reconcile these two things? That's what we're going to explore today through Parshat Masei. Before we begin, if you enjoy this video, please give it a like and leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. You can also click the bell to get notified when we go live on YouTube. And now on with the teaching. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu. There is a teaching attributed to the Baal Shem Tov in which he said, when a person engages in prayer, the person who forgets all their Torah learning in the midst of prayer is much closer to Hashem than one who remembers all of their Torah learning. So it's a strange teaching. Why is he pointing out that someone who forgets it all is closer to God? So the idea is that he's trying to point to the inner dynamic of prayer. What is it that's effective about prayer? In our normal engagement with life, we are trying to accomplish things and hopefully trying to grow, trying to learn Torah, trying to acquire our skills, do our practices, whatever it is. But there's something else that goes on internally when we do all of these good things. These are positive things. But there's something that goes on internally in which we think of those accomplishments and those acquisitions as me. It starts to become our identity, so that our successes build up a positive sense of self, and maybe our anti-successes injure our sense of self. The things that happen to us, we identify with them for better or for worse. And what the Baal Shem Tov is pointing out is that the reality of the sacred, the reality of the divine, is something that arises naturally or dawns upon us, the experience of which blossoms in the letting go of all of that identification, in the becoming of a nothing, in a sense, rather than a something, or becoming a nobody rather than a somebody. There's a funny story. Maybe you've heard it. I've told it many times, so apologies if you're hearing it again. But it's a story about a rabbi who is davening on Yom Kippur, and it's in the Ne'ilah service at the end of Yom Kippur. And the entire time, from Kol Nidre up until that moment, he was saying the words and he was trying to put his kavanah into it, but there really wasn't much transformation happening. And at a certain point, he realized, oh my God, I've been so arrogant. I've been so full of myself. And it's all nonsense. I'm nothing. I'm nothing. Hashem, I'm nothing. And that was like this ecstatic Yom Kippur moment of shedding all of his ego. And the Chazan, the cantor, was in earshot and heard him say, I'm nothing, I'm nothing. And the Chazan started to get inspired too and started shuddering and saying, I am nothing, I am nothing. Suddenly, Shmuley, the shoemaker, was sitting out in the congregation, heard what was going on, and started to get inspired also. And he said, Rabbono Shel Olam, I am nothing, I am nothing. And the Chazan turns to the rabbi and says, look who thinks he's nothing. So the idea is that even the nothingness, even having a genuine experience of nothingness, as soon as it becomes a memory, as soon as we identify it with our mind and say, oh, I'm having an experience of nothingness, then that too becomes ego. Everything is fodder for the ego. And so it's a tricky thing. It's not a spiritual realization or liberation or enlightenment, however we want to call these things, is not something that's accomplished and then you're finished. It's an ongoing moment-to-moment practice of disidentifying, of divesting from those things that we tend to cling to and identify with. However, in this parsha, the opposite seems to be happening. The tone of the parsha is to tell Bnei Israel, to tell the Israelites, what their somethingness is. So let's take a look. Ele Masei Bnei Yisrael Asher Yatzu Me'eretz Mitzrayim. These are the journeys of the children of Israel who went out from the land of Egypt. This begins the origin story, from the Exodus through the recounting of all the places they visited and battles they engaged. It then gives instructions for the future once they enter the land, how they should divide it between the tribes, and so on. As the last parsha leading into the last book of the Torah, it functions to define the identity of the Israelites, to affirm them as a something. This is where you come from, this is where you're going, and this is what you have to do. The implication is that identity and story are important. They give us direction and definition. And yet, Rabbi Akavya ben Mahalalel seems to agree more with the Baal Shem Tov. Akavya ben Mahalalel Omer, Da me'ayim bata, know from where you come, ul'an ata holech, and where you are going. Me'ayim bata mitipa sarucha, from where do you come? From a putrid drop. Ul'an ata holech, and where are you going? Limkom afar rima vetolea, to a place of dust, worms, and maggots. Not to depress anybody. So while this passage seems to begin with the same premise as the Parsha, advising us to know from where we come and where we're going, the answers have the opposite effect. There is no special identity of having overcome slavery and becoming a holy people, no promised land, just the harsh biological facts. You came from slime, and you're going to a place of dust, worms, and maggots. The first passage tells us who we are. It tells us we are something. The second knocks down our stories. It tells us we are nothing. Now, there are two Hebrew words that are sometimes translated as nothing, ayin and hevel, with opposite implications. Ayin is actually the spiritual goal of the... Sorry about that. That's a typo there. That should say Baal Shem Tov, not Baal Shem Tov. Ayin is actually the spiritual goal of the Baal Shem Tov, to realize the dimension of our own being that is no thingness, beyond all form. This is the open space of awareness itself, boundless and free, that which recognizes the sacred. The Tanya points out that while we may think of the splitting of the Sea of Reeds as a great miracle, like when the Israelites were escaping Egypt and the sea miraculously split, the far greater miracle is that there is a sea at all, that there is anything at all. The splitting of the sea was merely a manipulation of something that was already there, but the fact of existence itself is a bringing forth of yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. The Maggid of Mezrish took this a step further, saying that as great as the creation of the universe is, yesh me'ayin, something from nothing, even greater is our task to transform the something back to the nothing, ayin miyesh. Meaning, right now, as we hear these words, the words are a something. You perceive them, but what is it that perceives? What is it that hears? What is it that reads? The awareness that perceives is literally no thing. It is that which perceives all particular things, all sensations, all sensory perceptions, all feelings, all thoughts, even our own sense of identity. So we can become aware right now. What is arising in our experience? Sense of the flow of breathing, sense of the body, sense of feeling, emotional tone, mood, all of it arising within this space of awareness, this phenomena that we call ayin. This ayin is inherent in our own being, our innermost identity, not separate from the identity of existence itself, looking through our eyes, hearing through our ears. This is because when we stop doing this inner activity of me, of identifying stuff as me, then we can recognize that this awareness that we are at the deepest level is not only me. It is the awakeness of reality itself, seeing, hearing, feeling through this body-mind. The other word for nothing, which has a negative implication, is hevel, which could be translated as nothingness or futility, emptiness or vanity. Havel havalim amar Kohelet. Vanity of vanities, said the preacher. Havel havalim, hakol havel. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. This famous open line from Ecclesiastes springs from King Solomon's disillusionment with all his experiences and accomplishments. He had everything. He could do anything he wanted. And yet, all was nothingness. Everything comes and goes. A time for this and a time for that. Nothing is really new. Nothing really satisfies. So if you get down on yourself, thinking you should have done more, you should have acquired more, you should have become more, just think of King Solomon. He did it all, and he says, it's all hevel. The same word, interestingly, is used in the Haftarah for this Parshat Masei. Kol amar Adonai, thus says the divine, Ma matzu avotechem ki avel. What did your ancestors find in me that was wrong? Ki rachaku me alai v'yelchu achorai hahevel v'yebalu. That they distanced themselves from me and went after the hevel, went after the nothingness, and became nothingness. So both of these passages in the Haftarah and also in Ecclesiastes point to our human condition. We tend to make much of the hevel, running after this and away from that, but it is all for naught. We are going to a place of dust, worms, and maggots. Still, as the Haftarah implores, there is a way that leads to the divine, that leads to wholeness beyond all the hevel, to the ayin. As the last line of Ecclesiastes says, Sof davar hakol nishma, the end of the matter, when everything is heard, Et ha-Elohim yira et mitzvotav shemor ki ze kol ha'adam. Be aware of the divine and guard the mitzvot, for this is the whole person. Be aware of the divine. Be aware of the divine. Bring it in. Meaning, know the ayin that underlies everything. The no-thingness beyond all the things. The ayin that is aware right now through you. And guard the mitzvot. This is talking about how we live, what we do, how we are motivated. Don't act from the motive of running after or away from the hevel, but from service of the source, the ayin from which all springs and to which all will return. Make that your identity. Ele masei v'nei Yisrael asher yatzu me'eretz Mitzrayim. These are the journeys of the children of Israel who went out from the land of Egypt. So we are all potentially in this moment going out from Egypt, going out from the Egypt of our constrictions, identifications, worry, angers, dissatisfactions, all of the things that are symptoms of ego. We can go out from all of that. Right now, the divine has brought us to this moment to realize our inner freedom and has given the only important choice there is in this moment, to turn from the hevel of ego to the underlying ayin of your deepest nature and to sanctify this moment in which we find ourselves in service of the One. This is the path of Koof, sanctification of this moment. Shalom, I hope you've enjoyed this Torah of Awakening. If you'd like to go deeper with the letter Koof, you can do the guided meditation. I'll link it in the description box. And if you've enjoyed this video, I'd be so grateful if you would give it a like, Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment if you can. I'd love to hear from you. And also click the bell to get notified when we go live on YouTube. And when you're ready to go deeper, head on over to TorahofAwakening.com and become a member. We gather 5 days a week for meditation and learning. Also, classes for both children and adults, all at TorahofAwakening.com. Until next time, all blessings.